All right, so I'm back, making another mead sort of video. I haven't been drinking this morning, so this morning it's like afternoon. Um, Tell you a story, and I've got no research, no background, any of this, right? So it's got to be like almost 15 years ago. I was at a friend of a friend's house for Thanksgiving, and a guy comes out and he's made all this wine, homemade wine. First time I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, you know. Didn't ever do anything with it, but that's neat, right? So he brought me off to the side. We started talking about winemaking. I was like, that's really interesting. He started telling me the details, and he showed me these. I think he said they were Iraqi herbal wines, right? And at the time, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? I think now all that means is that they had herbs put into them, right? That always kind of got my brain going a little bit. So I decided, and I don't have any pictures of it, but I decided that I was going to make this. Let me flip this back over here real quick. You can tell that like I haven't cleaned that. Oh, that looks better. So decided I'm going to use these reishi mushrooms, which I've seen mushroom wine, and I don't suspect this is going to taste all that great. So I'm not going there with this. It's not so much about making this like delectable wine, but I wanted to try this. And so what I've got in here is some Ganoderma curtisi, which is a medicinal mushroom. If you've ever seen it, it looks kind of like an ear. I don't believe it counts as a shelf mushroom, but it's in that same sort of family of mushrooms. And it's one of those that you make a tea out of. You can eat it, but it's a pretty indigestible fiber. I mean, if you cooked it down, I guess it'd probably be edible a little more, but you cut into it and it feels like almost like cork. It's so woody. But it's got a lot of anti-inflammatory, antihistamine properties in it. And I am going to hopefully make a honey-based wine, because I don't use any granulated sugar. I don't use any chemicals. I don't use any clarifiers. I don't use anything other than just, well, in this case I'll be using what's left of this raw and unfiltered honey. And this Texas raw honey from Alvarado, which is probably about 25 miles south of where I'm at in Fort Worth. I'm actually in Saginaw, but whatever, close to Fort Worth. I was born in Fort Worth, and what we're going to do, I also don't do this very often. I actually never done this, and a lot of people do. I am going to make this tea here, and I'm going to cook that down. It smells great. It's like just amazing how good this smells. But I'm going to cook this down and let all those medicinal properties should come out of those mushrooms, and the rosemary should give it I'm hoping to give it a real nice flavor with that, sort of more of an herbal wine type flavor. And then I'm going to pour tea in here. I'll pour these honeys out into the bottle, and pour this honey here and that honey here. I'll pour that in the bottle, and then I'll take the hot tea and shake it up in these jars and go ahead and clear these jars out using the hot liquids, and then pour those into the bottle, and then I'll fill it the rest of the way up. So this is about 2 pounds, and I'm just sort of guessing that this is about a half pound. Yeah, maybe three quarters of a pound if you look at that there. So half pound, maybe 3/4 of a pound, something like that. So yeah, maybe 2.5 pounds, maybe, under 3 pounds. I'm pretty certain we're under 3 pounds. And again, I don't take a original gravity. I don't take a specific gravity in the beginning, and I don't take a specific gravity in the end. I don't really care what the alcohol content is. Some people say, well, how do you know if it gets stuck? I mean, to me, it's stuck if it stops fermenting, right? Now, I could be wrong about that. Somebody will correct me on that, but I feel like if it stops fermenting, it's probably stuck. And I feel like that's probably a pretty reasonable assumption on that. Um, I always have a little bit of leftover in a bottle. I'll show you all that real quick. So like this bottle here this is just what was at the closest to the bottom. If you've never fermented or done anything like this, you'll get lees, which is basically the fallen debris that's floating in your wine. You can see how cloudy, and it's got some funky stuff up here at the top. And this stuff on the bottom is lees. But if you'll watch, this will get kind of cool. I'm going to let the gas off of this. Might hear it. And then, well, every time but this time, it's bubbled from the bottom, started bubbling at the bottom. Anyway, so I kind of feel like, oh, you can see the bubbles here, look. There you go. So I kind of feel like as long as that stuff's happening, we're still fermenting. We're still, we're still making alcohol. And that process is going to continue, and I just try not to get overly concerned, like, oh, well, you got to know what your alcohol content. I was like, my thing is if it gets me drunk, then, all right, well done. I'm going to add some more water while we're talking here. But if I get drunk, then it's got alcohol in it. Well, how much exactly? I don't know, enough to get me drunk. So I haven't met a whole lot of people that drink alcohol for the delightful flavor. Otherwise, they'd probably just make soda, right? Like, probably just have a Coke. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I'm doing today. You should try it out, see what happens. See what kind of flavors we get out of it. I've seen people do stuff with like chocolate and everything else. That's just kind of not me. Oh, going back over here, this was lavender. This come out, and I've got 3 1-quart bottles. And it was lavender. And this actually, fermentation was real slow on this. It didn't take off and just go nuts like some of my other ones have. So it bubbled very little. But it is super sweet and delicious tasting. I thought I put in too much lavender tea. I did not. I think I kind of like nailed it by accident. So the cool thing about doing this mead wine is you take a bottle, you take a couple pounds of honey. The ratio seems to be pretty general. The recipes are like 3 pounds of honey in 1 gallon jug, add water till mixed thoroughly, add yeast, right? So, and that'll make wine. That'll make mead. The traditional term for honey wine is mead. But that'll make an alcoholic beverage just doing that. Like, that's all you have to do. Shake it up, let it set. Make sure everything's clean and sanitized, which I always do. But yeah, and then you're done. You've got wine, and then you start adding things, and then you get into back sweetening and all these other things, which are cool. I got some prickly pears I picked, and I'm gonna back sweeten. What do I got going? I've got a wine that I just started. I don't remember what's in it. I think it's got blueberries in it, but I'm probably gonna back sweeten that with prickly pear, and so that'll have a blueberry prickly pear wine. Or I may take this Iraqi wine, and if it's just like too bitter, because the curtisai mushroom, the Ganoderma curtisai, is known to be a little bitter. So if it's too bitter, in my first tasting of it, I may go ahead and back sweeten with prickly pear to try to sweeten it up. I feel like if you're going to use like a fresh juice, this is just me, if you're going to use a fresh juice when you do this, do it on the first rack, like after the main fermentation is done, which, I'm on like a 1 to 2 week primary fermentation. Like the first time I see a bunch of the junk fall, the bubbling slows down. In my airlock, just barely is trickling. That's kind of, I'm like, all right, my first one's done. I degas, I go to the next carboy, and I rack again there. And that's when I'm going to back sweeten. And at the end of it, if it doesn't taste good, then if it's not sweet enough, then I'll mix in some honey either in the bottle or in your glass. I mean, sometimes I think I'm finding out that some of the mead that you have at Scarborough Fairs or the Renaissance festivals, let me not say Scarborough Fair like that, but some of the Renaissance festivals, I think the story is some of that is white wine sweetened with honey. So they didn't even like it didn't start out as honey into wine. It's white wine sweetened with honey. So yeah. Yeah, so just sweeten your glass. If you don't like the taste of it, put some more honey in it. So, all right, guys, well, that's it. Maybe I'll let y'all know how it goes. Maybe I drink it all. Maybe I forget. Maybe I don't make another video. Who knows?